Mahagad Cahirlock and through Mr. Horan Bawalam Currer Mafalcha Hugat Harkanya Group Civil Engagement. Agus Bawalam Fresh and Mulla Howard and Thovak Tabanan and GAI. I want to welcome you, Mr. Horan, and also to commend the importance of our Gaelic Games within the social, cultural and sporting life of Ireland. I think the sport, the games, the memories of the games, the teams and the players are a huge source of pride and inspiration for communities and for people right across this country and indeed across the world. I myself have been lucky to experience twice the glory of a Galway hurling win, which is I think a moment no one forgets, and indeed I'm proud also of my own cousin Nolly Cleary, who has 9 caps in playing for the Cork senior ladies football team. But I think what's very important is not just these key moments and those wonderful matches and events that people might remember, but as you, I think, spoke about it very well in your speech, the role of the GAA as an experience for those who may never play in a county final, within, for example, the school's 5-star system, the idea of 60 minutes of playing and physical exercise, and of an exercise with such a lovely cultural resonance for people, and indeed the importance of physical and engagement and activity that the GAA can provide for older members of our community. And I think the walking tracks was a very practical example of that, and I think again it underscores a point which we will debate at other times in this House, but the need for green space planning, as you said yourself, the need for planning for full lives for people of all ages within our communities, both rural and urban, and investing in that, I think, is important. Gaelic Games have a strong tradition, I would say, and been passed down to generations, but I think they have also been proven, particularly in recent times, to be a very strong tool for cultural exchange and for the integration of new communities. While there is a deep history, I think it is becoming clear that the future is a diverse one and must be diverse. And I would like if you would perhaps talk a little bit more about that, because I know that inclusion, anti-racism, anti-sectarianism have been core priorities within the GAA. And I would like if you could perhaps talk in your chance to reply a little bit more about that, because I think it is very important, and it is very important that those who may be new to our communities, or those who indeed may come from cultural traditions which are different in other respects, feel invited and engaged in our sporting life as a nation. In particular, when we speak about equality of participation and those opportunities for participation, I think it's important to speak about the role of women's sport within the GAA. We know that almost 500,000 people, 476,000 people, watched the ladies' football final last year. We have huge interest, and I think it was a very positive step when the women's games were added to the free-to-air matches, the matches which are marked by a cultural exception and recognised as being of cultural importance to all of us across Ireland, and that's of course the basis on which they're kept as free-to-air, and I think that was a positive step forward. But I would like, there is still a deep inequity between the men and women's games in terms of both funding, in terms of access to facilities, both in terms of pitches and in terms of elite athletes training facilities, and in terms of the representation. There is also, of course, the ongoing task of bringing in a culture of respect, dignity and equality between genders and fostering that within clubs and teams. I think the sense of community and teamwork which the GAA has exemplified is often exhibited in a strong sense of support between the men and women's teams and between the players who wish to see each other succeed and excel. But I do believe there is perhaps more that the GAA can do in this regard as a champion of gender equality and equality of funding, facilities and representation. You have mentioned the one club model in terms of games organisation, but also in terms of capital funding and facilities. I think there is important work in that regard. We may in fact hear, I hope, from the Ladies Gaelic Football Association and on Common Camogie in the future. Lastly, you spoke of immigration and those I think it has been a sign and a measure of devastation in rural communities where we have struggled at times to pull together a local team. It's one of those, I think, signs of the need for greater support and opportunities for our young people right across Ireland. But, as was mentioned, the role that our emigrants have played in maintaining and engaging the sport and using it as a form of further cultural engagement internationally is very, very strongly important, and indeed placing our sports amongst a global community of sports, as we saw recently in the recognition from UNESCO. I'd like if you could just maybe, lastly, comment a little bit about that cultural importance of our sport and how it fits with, for example, the promotion of the Irish language, Irish music. And I know that GA has often been a centre for wider cultural engagement, and perhaps if you might comment on that. I thank you again very much and look forward to your further response.